We continue with Rambam Hilchos Chanukah. For the those who are just joining us for the first time, to give a quick synopsis of what we've established so far. We spent extensive time understanding what the Rambam says after telling over the stories of Chanukah, which we said the Rambam had to do because Chanukah doesn't have its own book. It's not part of the Tanakh. He doesn't tell you over the stories of Pesach when he gives you the halachas of Pesach. He doesn't tell you the story of Purim when he gives you Hilchos Megillah and the halachas of Purim, and he doesn't doesn't tell you about the Anoni HaKavod when he gives you Hilchos Sukkah and Lulav. Because as he writes in his Hakdama to the Mishnah Torah, he was depending. He was relying on the fact that you would go and read Tanakh, and all these stories are in Tanakh. And you just need his story for his book, Mishnah Torah for Torah Sheba'al Peh. But Chanukah is not in Tanakh. It's the last nace that was Nitan Li Kosev that be added to the Tanakh was the story of Purim. So that's why, as this is a book for everything you need in Torah Sheba'al Peh, I felt compelled to tell you the story of Chanukah. Right, that was one thing that we established. And after telling you the story of how we were liberated from the oppression of the Greeks, and we said other things, agav that over there, I have to refer you to dig up the first shiur that we said on Rambam Hilchos Chanukah, which is on my YouTube channel. But after that, we spent extensive time on the following Rambam, Halacha Gimel. The Chacham were of that generation, instituted that these 8 days that start on Chafei Kislev will be days of Simcha and Halo. And we went and we proved extensively in last year, which also seek it from my YouTube channel or from my website. We proved extensively that Chanukah are in essence days of Halo, and Halo is the mitzvah hayom of Chanukah, and it's like the other Yom Tovim that the mitzvah hayom is Lulav Sukkah, and the Halo is only because it's Yom Tov. It's only because it's Yom Tov. So the Halo is triggered by the fact that it's Yom Tov, as opposed to Chanukah are in essence days of Halo. And we spoke about that extensively, and that's why the Rambam puts all the laws of Halo in Hilchos Chanukah, because Halo has a different Chanukah and Halo have a different, more integral relationship with each other than Halo to the other Yom Tovim. And as we explained in great length, Halo is not a din tefillah, otherwise it would have been Sefer Ava. It's something in its own. It's not a request, and it's not thanks. Those belong to the category of tefillah and brachas and Sefer Ava. Right? Halo is its own thing, so it doesn't belong in Sefer Ava with all the other tefillahs and hodaos. Right? It's its own thing of praise to God, and it has a special relationship to the days of Chanukah more than any other Chag. And I'm just quickly summarizing things that were said already. Seek it from our website and our YouTube channel. So they are in essence days of Simcha and Halo, and also Simcha sounds like there's an Indian of having a good piece of meat or a good cup of wine in Halo. It's Chanukah. I keep on mixing up Chanukah and Halo because they are so integrally bound up with each other. And by the way, so first of all, after giving that whole shir last time, it just occurred to me in the most sort. We don't talk about the Nes Pach Hashemen at all. That's one thing to look into. But what does it say? So, actually, I take it back. I wasn't thinking. My mistake. I meant to say we don't talk about the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. We don't talk about the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. Of course, we mentioned Nes Pach Hashemen. We don't talk about the mitzvah of lighting the menorah at all. We don't talk about that at all. So, B'nei Vina Yemei Shmona Kavu Shir Urinanim. So what did the Bnei Bina do to Chavrusa Dor? It's a Rambam over here. And by the way, I don't know how old is the most surah. I leave this to our audience. All the different Jews sing it. How old is the most surah? Perhaps the most surah was influenced by the Rambam. They says Chachal Dor Hidushu Yemei Simcha V'Halo, and it's Bnei Bina Yemei Shmona. Shmona Yamim Elo Shetzchot Chafakizu Yem Simcha V'Halo. These 8 days. So Bnei Bina Yemei Shmona Kovu Shir Urananim. Right, that Mamash Halo is the essence. Is the mitzvah Hayom that most brings out what Chanukah is about. It's Be'etzem Yemei Halo V'Simcha, and as the Rambam as per the most sur, it's Mamash Mitzvah Hayom, the mitzvah of the day, literally, because the Chanukah counts at night. Right, so it sounds like it's more Be'etzem days of Halo, and then there's another mitzvah. Right, there's another mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. Right, and maybe as let's just read it again inside. Right, but before going on, it just occurred to me years ago. I was sitting in a shir. I was sitting together with a shir that was really geared to Balei Tshuva, but there were free sufganiyot, so why not go? And I sat in the crowd, and the rabbi, who I think was affiliated with Or Samech, was trying to educate the crowd, how to be yeshivish, right? And say, we don't say Afrelach in Chanukah. That's what you say in Purim. It's a lichtige Chanukah. And ever since I heard that shmooze, I was a very young, newly married guy. Made an impression on me. I never really thought of it one way or the other until that point. And after I was mocked with Chanukah, I think he said it over the name of one of the big Rosh Yeshiva. I don't want to mention his name because I'm about to argue on it. Chanukah, as if the ikr mitzvah that brings out the inyan of the day is the menorah, and it's not. As we went and we discussed at length in last year, and as we're saying today, it's Hallel. Yemei Simcha V'Hallel. Right, it's the essence of the day. So I'm back to a Freilich and Chanukah. It's going to take some habit breaking, but I'm back to a Freilich and Chanukah. I'm sorry. The ikr is Yemei Simcha V'Hallel. Kavu Shir Urananim. The mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is also a mitzvah, but it's not the mitzvah that most brings out the essence of the day. As now, look what we're going to do with this. So after he says, Yemei Simcha V'Halo, and also we light the candles on the openings of the house and every night, from of the 8 nights, to show the miracle. So it sounds like, of course, Persume Nisa. Right, but if you read the Rambam at the very end of Hilchos Chanukah, so it's not just a weak diuk that I'm making. Persume Nisa, but I say that like the essence of it is Halo, and the Persume Nisa in Chanukah is like a branch of it to do a form of Halo at night. How so? So because they say, it's the Haros of Gasanes to show. We say, Persume Nisa, of course. Which, by the way, the Rambam holds the same way by Megillah, that he passes like Rav Nachman, that the reason why there's no Hallel on Purim is because Kriyasa Zoelele, passes like Rav Nachman. We're going to learn this inside, just a few halachas. I would say it's Rambam Shtas, he holds Megillah, which is Persume Nisa, is instead of Hallel. So, okay, Chazal wants you to say Hallel by day. They want you to say Hallel by day. Right, but at night there's like a type of Halo. It's Lars Galsines. It will be very nice around the Shitaso because that's the way he says it by Megillah. Since we have Megillah by day, which is Persume Nisa, which I'm giving another share on this very shortly. By my good friend on the network, on the platform of my good friend Rabbi Avram Kivalevitz. There's Persume Nisa by Megillah, Kayadua. We're going to talk about that, right? And the Rambam holds that Persume Nisa counts for Halo, like the Shita of Rav Nachman, or as a replacement for Halo. So, who did the Persume Nisa of Ner Chanukah by night is like it's like Halo at night also, but just not Halo as we know it, because that's generally a mitzvah only by Yom and not by Laila. Pesach is the exception. Leil Pesach is the big exception. And that's why, the Ashken, Lela Seder for the Ashkenazim and for the Sfardim, okay, it's another exception, which caught on, the Shita of the Machaber, right? that they say hallow with a bracha at night. That's the big exception. That's the big exception, right? Otherwise, hallows by day. So we have regular hallow by day, and we have hadlakas neres by night, and of course, couldn't have hadlakas neres by the day. Shraga b'tiara ma'ihanya. But it's like the way it reads over here, it's like it's the days of hallow and silver, and also you light candles at night, to further publicize the miracle. It's a form of hallow at night. That really the essence of Chanukah is hallow, and the Ner Chanukah is another type of hallow. So now here you might say it's a weak diuk, which I don't think. I think it's a reasonable diuk. But let's just go to the end of Hilchos Chanukah, mamish, the very last halacha in Hilchos Chanukah. Right? I'm sorry, second to last. He talks about how great Ner Chanukah is, and the last one is how Ner Shabbos, Shalom is even better, right? Sorry, third to last. I'm sorry. Even though, as we're going to say in a second, all the breaks in the halachas of Kabbalah from Rosh Yeshiva, Zichron of Yaakov Weinberg, all the breaks in the halachas in the Mishnah Torah in general is not something you can be medayik from. You can be medayik, they put in this parak and not that parak. But the break in halachas, the Rambam writes openly in his Hakdama, he broke the halachas to make it easy to memorize. So it's not such a diuk if it's in this halacha versus that halacha in the same parak. You really have to read the parak as a continuum. And we're going to come back to that in just a second. But right here, it's paraked out. Halacha Yud Beis, mitzvah ner Chanukah, mitzvah chavivi ad moed. The mitzvah ner Chanukah is so dear. V'tzarnu mizaraba, right? And a person has to be careful with the mitzvah of Chanukah. Kedei lo dia nes, to make the nes known. V'lahaisif b'shevach hakel. And to add Shevach Hakel, add glory to God, praise to God, and of course thanks on the nisim they did for us. So it comes up Ner Chanukah's Losif b'Shevach Hakel, and Hoidaya. It's Hallow V'Hoda, as we said in the last year. Again, seek it from either my YouTube channel or my website. We were machal that Hallow Hoda could be a aspect of tefillah, right? Hallow's bria b'fnei atzma. So that's why Hoda, like Dalet Shechim Lahodas, saying Birkas Hagomel is on Sefer Ava with the Hilchos of tefillah, and like Birkas Hamazon, which is also Midaraisa, it's a Hoda, right? So Ner Chanukah is Losif Lodiras V'Lahaisif B'Shevach Hakel V'Odiyala on this Rishas, right? So it's mamish a getter of hallow. Losif b'shevach hakel baruch hu. All right, so now we let's just go back to the Lashon Rambam. So Yemei Ha'elu Nikroim Chanukah v'Yasur B'Esr V'Tais K'Bei HaPurim. These days are called Chanukah. These Yemei Hallow v'Simcha. That on them you also light the candles. So hallow is the essence of it. Freilchem Chanukah, right? Hallow is the essence of it, and then Ner Chanukah is like a branch. It's another mitzvah, but it's like a branch of the principle of L'Hosim B'Shevach Hakel, or B'Aydei Persumei Nisa. Like we said, it's going to work out very geschmack. Rambam Shitasai, they're also by Megillah. So reason why I don't have hallow on Purim, because by day you'll read the Megillah. And we're going to learn this in just a second. So then they call it Chanukah. These days are called Chanukah, and they're Asr Hesper the Taras, like days of Purim. So once he's equating them, he's saying just like by Megillah, it's the din of reading Megillah is a mitzvah. So also, lighting the candles is a mitzvah. So for him, like Kriyas HaMegillah. Right? It's not a minhag. It's a mamash, a mitzvah de Rabbanon. And since Mamash Mitzvah Rabban, you're going to make a brach on it, and that's why he goes on to say in Halacha Daled, Kosh Chayv Kriyas Chayv Adlokas Ner Chanukah. Anyone's Chayv. We just said it's like Kriyas HaMegillah, and whoever's Chayv in Kriyas HaMegillah, which is everyone, meaning just not Ketanim, right? And of course, Rambam L'Shitasa holds an Eved Kanani. It's a Machlokas Rishonim, right? Seemingly. But the Rambam holds Eved Kanani is not chayiv in Mikra Megillah, Right, there's some Rishonim that hold that he is, right? And he says, and who are dinami, and Eved Kanani is not chayiv in lokas ner Chanukah, even though an Eved Kanani is chayiv in mitzvahs like a woman. So that's very clear. The Ram sets up the equation and he makes it very clear. He's somech on what he wrote in Hilchos Megillah. He's somech on what he wrote over there, right? That he says even though women are chayiv, an Eved Kanani is not, just an Eved Meshuchra. And so because he doesn't want to have to recap who's Chanukah. Right? He just said, look in Hilchos Megillah, which is all one. These are called Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah. If lights menorah the first night, which is tonight, he makes 3 brachas. It's interesting. I think Nusach Svarad. Svaradi, I believe they go with the Arizal that says should be Ner Chanukah, but the Rambam is Ner Shel Chanukah. Just as Yisrael say no, and also Bizur Brach Shasi v'Shechel Kimano. Chol also have low Berach Varshaim, and someone who sees it and did not make a bracha yet. Mashba sounds like he holds like Rashi. Misha Loid Likadayin. Mechol also v'lo Birech, he sees it and he did not make a bracha yet. You should say Vilo Yevarech, Vilo Yadlik. Right, so the clear reading is they holds like Rashi, Rashi in the Gemara when he brings the din of Aroa Ner Chanukah Misha Lo Idlik Adayin Oli Yoshev Besvina. Rashi holds the 2 criteria. Anyone just didn't light yet, he should still make a Birkas Ariyah if he sees it before he had a chance to light at home. Right, or if he's traveling, that's something very interesting. Says Rashi is even Yoshev B'Svina means presumably if you're on a yacht and you have your own cabin, you still don't light Chanukah candles. What it sounds like. Chazal only put it on the house mamish. I meant the Rashi, right? Chazal only put the din on the house itself mamish, right? Right, but if you are if you are in so it's also people are worried, okay, how do you light? You're on a flight territory, you light candles. I don't think you're chayiv. We at least have one reason that says lehedja, you're potter at that time. Besides the fact that they won't let you, right? You're mash potter. It's for a house. You light in a house, not in a vehicle. The vehicle has a roof. That's what it sounds like. At least from Rashi, right? So I'll call upon him. So the Rambam says that so if Velo Bir, he didn't make a bracha yet. Say if he meant like the other Rishonim, which is what we're choshish for. We paskin because of Safed brachas lahakel that anyone who will light in any way, shape, or form that same night will not make a birkas hariyah. Right? It's a consolation prize for someone who won't light. It's a consolation prize. That's what it is. But if you're going to light, you don't make a birkas hariyah, and I do believe that's ask your local rabbi. But I believe we're choshed. So who sees it and he did not make his bracha should be on the first night. Makes 2 brachas. Nisim and shechianu. And the other night, the one who lights, makes 2 brachas, because no shechianu, and then the roeh only makes shasarisa because he only makes shechianu b'alayla harishon, right? B'alayla harishon. Okay. All right. So then he goes back to Hallel. So I remember I'm like so traumatized. I was a young boy. I was maybe 18 at the time. Trying my first steps in Lumdus. Right. Just trying, getting my feet wet in Lumdus, that's all. And, so some guy challenged me, some guy, I was visiting the Mir, I was learning Shalavim. So, of course, complex, I matched myself up against the guy learning in the Mir. And back then, the Mir was the Mir. And now that anyone who learned in the Mir, they first went at the age of 21. They didn't accept young guys back then. Okay, so one guy in the Mir is challenging me. Why is we know, as we're going to see, right, the Rambam is going to spend the balance of the parak talking about Hilchos Hallel. It's going to talk about Hilchos Hallel, right? So so now he's gonna go and talk about the laws of lighting the menorah in the next parak Dalet. Right? So why is he saying over here you make birka, you make right? Why is he telling you these halachas? Why is he telling you these halachas? Why is he even mentioning it? And why is he mentioning halachas of the brachas? And I try to say this teretz and that teretz, and he steamrolled me, and a relative of mine to me at that time ganged up on me. There's a big kash, there's a big lot. Anyone and any Lamdan would find this Rambam very shver. Why he is talking about the din of the birchas ner Chanukah over here. Okay, it sounds like he shouldn't have even mentioned it because it saved the whole thing for save the whole thing for halacha dalet, for parak dalet. I meant to say, that's what they asked me, and I'm still traumatized out of Yom Hazeh, even though it's decades later. I won't say exactly how many decades. Why is he talking about it over here? But okay, so so I have two things to say about this, and I indeed I have charat on the lumda shatrusim I tried to say back then, because you don't need lumdas. Okay, it's there's two very basic yesodis that you need to know about the style of the Rambam. Okay, right. First of all, he goes in the derech of the Mishnah. Right, he goes in the derech of the Mishnah. Right. So now, in Mishnayos, he says, "Now how do I know he goes to the Mishnah?" He writes that. It's a very, that his Hebrew and his style is Mishnah dik. That's why it's called Mishnah Torah. And we have a lot of shiurim on this, right? So, and he always envisioned himself doing it Mishnah style. Not only he writes it in the, in this Hakdama to the Yad, but when he envisioned the whole Mishnah Torah project, back in when he was writing the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he said he's going to do it in the derech of the Mishnah. He's going to do it in the derech of the Mishnah, right? The Hebrew of the Mishnah, the derech of the Mishnah. Okay, so like we have many of Mishnahs, they talk about one mitzvah. They introduce two dinim, right? Two dinim, right? And then A, B, and then it goes back to A. Right, and then the Gemara is mafalpa. Sometimes it goes back to A. Sometimes it finishes up with B, and then goes out. So there's masker A, B, and goes back to A. Right. So the Rambam over here, because he's talking about, he's introducing. Right. The mitzvahs of Chanukah, first and foremost, hallow. But there's also you light candles at night. So now he's just finishing up what's explain that Chanukah candles is like Megillah, right? And once it gets at, he mentions also quickly the issue of the brachas on Chanukah, just to finish up. And then he goes back for Hallow, right? So now, so why did he mention the brachas, right? Because he's about to have a long discussion, which is actually a Rambam that doesn't get enough attention, about the brachas on Hallow. So he's finishing up quickly with Ner Chanukah, right? And as brachas, because he's about to discuss the brachas of Hallow, like the Gemara does. So they mentioned something by Hallow mitzvah A, mitzvah B, says a few details by mitzvah B that are short and succinct, and it goes back to finish up with A. There are Mishnayos that do that, and the Rambam is doing it in this instance. But he did want to mention something else, because he's going to go back, once he's mentioning Ner Chanukah, and why it's like Megillah. So he's stopping in Birkas Ner Chanukah, because he's about to go back and discuss Birkas Hallow, which the Rambam, for some reason, is amazed that you make a bracha on Hallow, and we're going to have to understand that. So, of course, he's going to, once he mentions, Ner Chanukah, he's going to finish up with, and you make a bracha, and he's going to go back to Hallow to discuss Birkas Hallow. That's his first sugya, right? That's his derech. Now that's A. And B is another thing you have to, what we said before, name the Rosh Yeshiva Zichron Livracha. Is right that just accentuates this point. You cannot get bogged down that he separates the halachas. When you want to know what the Rambam meant in a given parak, you got to read the whole parak straight through. You got to remember they only broke up the halachas to make it easier to memorize. But Rosh Yeshiva said there's no deal that this is halacha gimel and next thing is an halacha down. You can be medayik just in the general way he says it, right? And you can also be medayik that's in this parak and not that parak. That is a diuk. When we say it can be medayik from the Seder Rambam, that includes on the parakim. Why is it in this parak, that parak? Why is it, why didn't he put in halacha gimel? Why is it in the very next halacha dal? He meant for you to read through it straight, but when memorize it, take this halacha first, and that halacha. So when you read it very straight through, it all makes sense. He's about to talk about Birkas Halo. So once he mentions Ner Chanukah, he's got to finish up with he mentions that it's a mitzvah like. And it's also, he's introducing all the mitzvahs. He's also introducing haroeh, right? He's interesting, and that's another thing. This is like how they ganged up on me was so stupid, because he's being mazkir the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, and he has to be mazkir the roeh, right? Right? He has to be mazkir the basic difference between them. The madlik has an extra bracha that the roeh does not. And it's just to get it done because he's about to talk about birkas mitzvah by Halo, right? And that's spare me, the fake lumdas. It's very straightforward, and he's following the pattern of many mishnahs. So go A, then you introduce B with a few extra details, and then you go back to A, to discuss mamish that extra detail that you introduced in B. Right? And it's also when you read it straight through, it's very clear. Right? It's also if you had to introduce. Once you talk about Ner Chanukah, he has to introduce. There's a duality, the madlik and the roeh, and he has to. So what's the difference? Well, the difference, part of the very big difference between the madlik and roeh is that they don't make the same amount of brachas. And kushimi kara lessa. But look how it damaged, tarnished the the self-confidence of a young 18-year-old just trying to get his feet wet in lumdis. Okay, but I forgive them. Yeah. All right, for the people who's tuning in for the first time, you're going to have to get used to my sense of humor. Okay, although the story is true. Fine. So now we go on to what, in my opinion, is a very schwer Rambam that does not get enough attention. Right? Really does not get enough attention. This is a very schwer Rambam that we are about to learn, right? Because he's going back now to Birkas Hal, like we said. That's why I mentioned Birkas. He finished up because it's something short. There's nothing tricky. There's nothing tricky about the brachas by Ner Chanukah. So once he mentioned Ner Chanukah and the roeh and the big dessert, which isn't brachas, so he says the brachas, which is not tricky. It's short. Now he goes back to talk about Hilchos, because Birkas Halo to the Rambam for some reason is schwer, right? It's amazing. But take a broad look at the Rambam and Parak. He goes in the derech of the Mishnah, right? So he mentioned extra din by the second one, because by the second one it's not an arichas, and it was necessary to mention the brachas to differentiate between the two levels of Ner Chanukah, the madlik and the roeh. The main difference between them is in their amount of brachas. So it was the right thing to do, and it was short and it's simple. And now he goes back to discuss Birkas Halo, which to him is amazing. And the very fact that Rambam considers it amazing is tzarich, and that's without further ado. B'chol yom v'yom mishmaras hayomim ha'elu gomrim v'sahalo, and all these, each one of these 8 days, you finish the house, halo shalom. U'varach levar, we make a bracha before the halo, lasher kisham b'tzav tzivonu ligmar sahalo. Right, that's the bracha that they used to make. I don't know if Sfardim do it ad ayom hazeh. I know a lot of Rishonim have it that when it's halal shalom, you don't say likros halo. When it's halal shalom, you say ligmar sahalo, because halal shalom is the bracha you make when it's halal shalom. The Sfardim don't make a bracha on halal Rosh Chodesh at all. But they make likros halo. I believe. You ask a Sfaradi, right? I think it's they make likros halo on Chol Hamoed Pesach. Right, because Chalmud Pesach is minadin, just not halal shalom, because there's no chiluk in the korbanos, the Gemara says. Whereas halal Rosh Chodesh is only a minute. You don't make a bracha on a minute. That's the Shitas Rambam. We'll see this in a second. But here's the thing that the Rambam, is amazed by. Right, so we make a bracha ashik, so the Gemara sahal, and they said that's why he first mentioned the brachas by Ner Chanukah, which he holds is a no-brainer. So let's just mention it there and finish it up, and then go back to discuss Birkas Halo, right? Vabishkas Halo mitzvah divrei seifrim. Now, even though it's a mitzvah, divrei some bracha v'ashazov tzar kidash bracha megil vala eruv, right? So now still you make a bracha on it, like Megillah, which is a mitzvah midivrei seifrim, right? And Eruv. Why Megillah and Eruv? For some reason, these two are considered to be like quintessential mitzvahs to Rabbanan. I think, right? Quintessential mitzvahs to Rabbanan, right? Megillah and Eruv. Give me a second. I want to check something. Back in Sefer Hamada at the end of his introduction, he has two introductions really, just explaining the project, and then he has a list of Tariq mitzvahs, and he first lays out Tariq mitzvahs in the same order, Sefer mitzvahs. Then he says it is how it's going to be here, and I have a lot of shurim on it. Why Tarti Lamali? Why do we need two different orders of how the mitzvahs are set up? Which he holds both of them are necessary. Oh man, the program I am using just goes straight into Yesodei HaTorah. Shrek. On Hebrew books, you have Rambam, all right. If anyone has a sefer, I'm going to look. I don't want to waste, not flat, so God forbid it's not waste of time. I don't want to spend time right now looking for, for that Ram. But I do believe when he talks about the mitzvahs to Rabbanan, that the Rabbanan added, and why they're not Baal Tosef, he definitely mentions Megillah. I'm wondering if he mentions Ner Chanukah also, or Eruv, because it's very strange, Mikra Megillah. If I were him, I would write, like Mikra and like Ner Chanukah I just mentioned. And he just this is the big pella. Now, Halacha before he mentioned you make a bracha on Ner Chanukah, so just say like Ner Chanukah, right? That's quite a pella, So first of all, the fact that excuse me, I'm in the wrong parak over here. It's mamash a pella. It's such a pella that he just said you on Ner Chanukah you make a bracha. And he said, okay, good. Also, and even though it's a mitzvah divrei so I'm still like Megillah and like Eruv, you just mentioned Ner Chanukah a sentence ago. You give that as the example. But what's the pell? Why would you think otherwise? The Rambam had already dealt, with this issue way back when in Perak. I think it's Perak Yudav of Hilchos Brachos. I think it's what is it? Perak Yudav. Rambam, we make brachos on mitzvahs to Rabbanan. Look, he had Hilchos Megillah, and he didn't talk about, even though it's a D'Rabbanan, we still have to make a mitzvah. And he had just mentioned by Ner Chanukah, and it's a pell that, why is he referring back to Megillah and further back to Eruv? Didn't you just mention Hilchos Chanukah? Hilchos Ner Chanukah, I meant to say Ner Chanukah, you make a bracha. So that's one shverkeit. But a bigger shverkeit that in Lomdus, what's his hollow? I need an answer. It's only midrabanan. It's all right. Why do we make a bracha? What do you mean? You dealt with this already back in Sefer Ava and Hilchos Brachos. Why we make a bracha on mitzvahs to Rabbanan? Says that even though it's midrabanan, remember it's like Megillah, it's like Eruv. Okay, what's the problem? What's the problem? Why would I think otherwise? And why do you go? So I don't even have a good answer why I didn't just refer to Ner Chanukah they just mentioned. It goes back to Megillah. Megillah is not such a kasha because it's Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah. But he sends me all the way back to Eruv if you're looking for a different example. That's schwer. But what's the hab? What's he worried about? Don't worry about it, even though it's Hal's Drabban still. It's like Megillah. It's like you still make a bracha. So besides, I can't get over the fact that he skipped over Ner Chanukah that he just mentioned. You're Mavarech, right? We understand why he brought down the brachas of Ner Chanukah. He's about to be Mefalpil and Birkas Hala. So he mentioned A, B with a few there, and then back to the topic that he's going to be Marachon in A, in Hala. And that's Pasha. Those guys that bullied me. I forgive them. Kids. So he says, it's so you still make a bracha, right, on it, because, it's no worse than Megillah and Eruv make brachas. And he goes on to add something very cryptic, which the Torah has nothing to do with anything. I'll explain, but let's just read it first. Shekol vadai shel divrayim b'varchel love. Anything that's a vadai tzivim midrabanan to do, we have to make a bracha on it. But if Chazal make me do something, but the whole reason is that they say it's lahachmir lotzeis yedei sofek. Lahachmir lotzeis yedei sofek could go meiser demai, like meiser, and demai that we have to take off, because we don't know, if meiser was taken, so even though they're making you. We have to treat the mai as tevel, and they tell you to treat it in there, and they're making you do it. But the reason why I do it is because to be choshesh for the suffix, right? Be choshesh for the suffix. When the tzivu is, we command you to be machmir misafek, take the chumrah side of the suffix. When it command you, okay. So since the whole reason is because of lahachmir al suffix, on that you don't make a bracha. It's only when they give you a vaday that it's not a suffix. This is just we'll give you a mitzvah. It's not to be machmir ala suffix. It's a mitzvah. All right, so if it's a vaday d'rem, it's begetter mitzvah, and you make a bracha. It's lachmir ala suffix. It's not begetter mitzvah d'rabbanan. It's a tziva d'rabbanan, but it's not a mitzvah d'rabbanan because they're just telling you we are legislating for you to be machmir ala suffix. So why do we make a bracha on Yom Tov Sheni? For us who live in Chutz La'aretz, everyone knows we make all the brachas, right? And it's just Sveika D'Yoma, it's misafek that we keep Yom Tov Sheni because we're keeping the minhag as if, right? As if, right? It's as if it's a suffix, right? It's because that's why they used to keep Yom Tov Sheni when we were Kashmir. They didn't know which day was Rosh Chodesh, right? So, okay. So it should be that we were chayiv to Rabbanan say we're chayiv to keep Yom Tov Sheni, but for here we see it's a raya that even though now it's not a suffix anymore, it's it's still even though it's a minhag, it's still called a takonos Rabbanan. You have to tell this too because he did deal with this in Hilchos brachas, and there was a big brisker rav on this in Hilchos brachas. I think that's where it is. So he said, but Chazal make brachas, so you shouldn't be makel on it. Shouldn't be makel, right? Kadesh lo yizalzalubo. Kadesh lo yizalzalubo. Right? There's a lot to be medak legabe Yom Tov Shein. That's not our ikar sugya. But the Rambam say, it's a vaday divrei. That's not the reason you make a bracha, right? If you know what he's quoting over here, we say in this forum we don't look anything up, but we do speak from memory because we're being mefalpel on. You look it up and you check me if I misled you, or if if I misled you, or if there's an obvious answer. The ground rules for those who are tuning in for the first time is this is a Chavrusa and Rambam, and working only with the Rambam as far as text in front of us. You're allowed to bring in what you remember. Those are the ground rules of how we do this. Okay, so as I recall, the reason why that's phasing Gemara's brachas, Gemara says the reason why we make a bracha, which is what the Rambam writes in Hilchos brachas, Perek Yud Aleph. The Rambam brings Rav Avia, right? That lo sasur. The reason why you make heichon tzivanu. Gemara says, how can you say Hashem Yisham Mitzvah tzivanu? Heichon tzivanu miloi sasur. And Ram says over there in Hilchos brachas that Hashem Yisham Mitzvah tzivanu. V'tzivanu lo sasur, to be makabel from those who said lahadik ner Chanukah, to be makabel from whoever said al mikra megillah, command us al mikra megillah. So like Ram says, the kavana in your head is ashek shom mitzvah v'tzivanu with lo sasur, to ashek shom mitzvah v'tzivanu lo sasur, to be makabel from those who mitzvah on mikra megillah, those mitzvah on lahadik ner Chanukah, etc., etc., etc. That's the reason why you make a bracha. The Gemara is just mefalpo and asks, okay, but the Rabbanan were mechayiv me to take, maestros from Demai, right? And they put why don't I make a bracha la'afresh, afrashas maestros, or whatever bracha you make, right? So because it's mipnei suffix. So the Gemara only raised this svara. Gemara only raised the svara of why we don't make a bracha on doing hafrashas, trumas and maestros on Demai. Rather the svara of that, only if it's a mitzad vaday. It's only just because they had a kasha. So the Rambam's not even saying the bottom line. And it's amazing that the Ravid's not Masik. The Ravid has a different problem. Right? The Ram has the Ravid is preoccupied with a different issue. With the Rambam, but the Ravid should have asked this also. You don't even have to come on to the 2/3 of the Gemara said. You're either Mavorach Midin, he passes like Ravavia over there in Hilchos Brachas. That's Midin Lo Sasser. Rav Nachman says it's Midin Shalavicha V'Yagetcha. That's where Hechon Tzivanu, and that's why you make a bracha, right? The Gemara just had a problem. So why don't you make a bracha on Hafrashas Demai? So the Gemara answered, well, because first of all, it's Mipnei Asafik. It's not a vada. You only make a bracha on vada, but that's secondary. Just to explain why on demai you don't make a bracha. It's not the reason why you make a bracha. The reason why you make a bracha is because lo sasor or shalavicha v'yagetcha, right? Right. So it's like so we have a lot of kashas over here. A lot of kashas. Kasha, and we're going to leave it here on this cliffhanger. So kasha number one is, what is even the problem? Like he's stressed out and he feels he's got to say a teretz. Now we could make a bracha on hollow. I say it's not any worse than other mitzvahs d'Rabbanan. Why would I think it's any worse? All right. B, why that's A. B, why he has to give me examples of as if this is the first, as if we don't notice. He assumed you learned the yad straight through. Say for Ava, you already said you make brachas on mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, and he said already earlier, when he said Hilchos Megillah, Hilchos Erev, he said you make a bracha, at least in Hilchos Megillah, at least, right? It may be right. Yeah, you make a bracha, but okay, but he just gave me an example one line before. Then Ner Chanukah, you make a bracha. We have to go. Shoot back examples from Megillah and Eruv, right? Right. Number 3 is that so now he says the svara that he brings. That's not the reason why you make a bracha. That's just the reason why you don't make a bracha on demai, because it's just midin lahachmir ala safek. Now, what we could bedaik, what he says by Yad Tov Shem, we're going to leave that from now. But I'm giving you a marmok. I think the Brisker Rav in Hilchos Brachos discusses it, right? So now we'll just to finish off. So it's like we have so many kashas here. Is this to me? This is the most shver Rambam in Hilchos Chanukah. This one more than any other one, right? And it's to me, it's one of the most shver Rambams ever, throughout the Mishnah Torah. Let's just read that. So the Rav just has a different hasaga, also legitimate concern, but it has an afmila halacha. This was the teretz of Abaye. So the Gemara just asks, okay, if you have to make a bracha on a tzivui d'Rabbanan, they were mitzavahs to take off on Tamai. Why don't we make a bracha? So Abaye says, because it's only misafik. They're telling us to be machmer. The getter of it was to be machmer al safik, right? This is not about to being machmer al safik. This is vada chiyav Megillah Eruv hollow. Sorry, you feel to say hollow, right? That was Abaye. Rava said a more fundamental read, which makes a big nafka. It's not just Demai. It's not just stam safik. Demai is not stam safik, right? It's korov levadai because rov amei arts masrnein. It's korov levadai, right? That trumas and meisos were taken, not just truma, even meiser. Rov amei arts. It's not even a suffix. It's mamish just a chumra ba'alma. So they didn't want to institute a bracha because mamish chumra ba'alma because it's not even a suffix. And he says, therefore, it will come out according to Rava on a real legit suffix that they're telling you to be machmir on. A real legit, you would still make a bracha, which means according to Rava, it's not a kasha why we make a bracha on Yom Tov Sheni. A real suffix, you make a bracha. At least, it's not a kasha back in the days when it was a real suffix, right? Why we make a bracha on Yom Tov Sheni. You don't need to come on to me, any real suffix to Rabbanan, according to Rava, and they tell you to be machmer al suffix, you'd make a bracha. You don't have to say because of age. Also, it's just dafka demise, the outliers, the exceptions. The because Rov Amir is master name, and that's taka. It's a good kasha to write. It's kasha. Why is the Rambam? The halacha is abayev Rav halacha kerava chutz miyal kagam. There's not one of the yal kagam. Why is the Rambam going like Abai? So that the Ravid's kasha is legit. But my says, why is this even brought up here? Why? What is the question that by Hallel that it's a pell, you make a bracha on Hallel, and yes, kamis, and he brings in, as if he forgot about Shal Vichvi Agetcho, or Rambam goes like Ravavia, Lo Sasur. This Rambam is so schwer, even though it reads beautifully, to the shallow mind, it just translates it, but anyone who thinks a little bit deeply, this is a very schwer Rambam. Maybe we all think about it until next time. Okay, I got to break that habit, we said. Freilich and Chanukah. You may simcha v'ala. Okay, to be continued.